So you can pick whichever exercise. I had a really interesting experience. I took my first Aunkai class online with Xavier, and I had a really interesting experience with Shiko, and it was super cool.
Right.
We can talk about that later, but pick the simplest exercise. Really, it's probably the best.
Okay. Before I do that, let me just say we are just because of he keeps on innovating, he keeps on making up different variations, and so when he says do Shiko, I'm just like at this point I have to be like, which version, Sensei?
Yeah.
Talking about the first version he made me do, the most recent one, the one with the tangen, the one with the chest, the one with the lightning. It's like the one where I know you're just showing off, and you said that you're just showing off, and no one should copy it, right? So, okay. So we have basics. So the three core exercises for development are Enjijin, Shiko, and Shintai Shiko. And they're all variations on one another, basically exploring things from different angles. But before you get to that, typically he had us do ashiage, which is the wushu, you're familiar with Chinese martial arts, raise the leg in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And when Ark did it, it was like, now I did it when I did Mantis, actually, under a Polish guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he had very good body mechanics. While I said Sam was the first person that gave me a sense for internals, Chris came close in a way in that because his body was connected, but it just didn't have the same kind of refinement at the time. But I was, because I did that traditional sense of praying mantis, one of the things that we had to do was the Jibin Gong, or foundational training, which is you have to move your leg in different directions, without contorting the body too much. But oftentimes what you see in Wushu is this in an effort to kick up high, right?
Yes.
Ark's first admonishment was you have to take the slack out of the chest here. The shoulder blade should move relaxedly back, although we all misinterpreted this, and I just kind of clenched my shoulder blades together. And the idea was that you should be able to move your limbs in all these different directions without affecting your central axis. That is, your tissue conditioning, your sense of balance needs to be on point such that you can move your leg in different directions. But he said, it's not a kick. Don't kick your leg up. You're extending it out. And as you get more advanced in this exercise, it's about pulling the leg back in. And that actually means there's actually a sophisticated movement in Chinese terms. It would be the Mingmen, or the kidney area. There's a what do you call it? A manipulation back there to actually move the leg.
You're talking about the leg is here.
Yes.
Talking about pushing it. So here's my Mingmen. Here's the back of my sacrum.
Yes.
And you talk about pulling the leg in this way.
Kind of, yeah. So it looks almost like it's swinging, and it's connected from the Mingmen out to the leg. So it doesn't look like it's kicking out. It looks like it's articulated out very fast.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And you're controlling your leg with the back of your back.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So you're not kicking. Well, at least not from the sense that you would normally think.
And not just swinging with the momentum.
Yeah, kind of, but you control it, and then ultimately you actually control your legs from your diaphragm, from this part here. So your legs actually come all the way up to here as you get better and better.
Through your psoas, I'm assuming.
Yeah, through your psoas all the way up to here. Okay. It's like your legs start from here. Like you can flip your mental model such that you can take control of your legs from here.
Interesting.
But the whole point is that if you're moving through space and your leg is a mass and you swing your leg and you're getting pulled left and right, how are you going to be able to move properly, right? So first you have to bring your own center of axis, your axis, tissue, everything under control. That's the primary concern. And because he was a gymnast, for him this was easy.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. All right.
And actually, for me, I was really lucky in that I already kind of went through this with Chris, but I had the bad habit of trying to I was like, look, I can kick my leg up over here. He's like, Yeah, but you're crunching yourself a little bit when you do it. Now, like, what do you mean? He's like, you have to be straight. You don't want to move this axis at all. The zongding or that central equilibrium has to be on point.
Why?
Because if it doesn't, you lose your balance. And when you lose your balance, when you kick somebody, there's feedback. And when there's feedback, you lose power. Right? So really, really simply put, if you want to kick harder, one of the first things that a really simple thing that I would do to people is says, don't focus on the kicking leg or the weight. Don't try to put the weight into the person. Focus on your weight on the standing leg only. Focus on that stability, right? Make that heavy. Your kicking leg should be light, but the person receiving the kick, it'll feel heavy as hell.
You want a stable revolving point. So that
it can be. It can be revolving, but for now, just if you, yeah, it just has to be stable. Yeah, you don't want it flexing. Yeah.
So you don't lose, so you don't leak any of that sort of like force that you're producing with the kick.
Exactly. That's the first stage. Whether you do that by muscle or whatever, we don't care.
Yeah.
Right. You just gotta stabilize it.
Okay.
Right. So you do that. You do all the various, So you're going to front, side, turn, crescent, half crescent, full crescents. You just tax the various directions for your brain and for your body. Then at the same time, then you start getting into tenjijin to maho, which is, okay, before we get into tenjijin is this exercise where forces come up, your hands come up, which expresses the, I guess, support from above, basically, right? And then as your hands are basically weights, and then as you bring this load all the way down to your body, you bring them all the way down to the sole of your feet. That's chi, or ground. And then jin denotes the fact that you then gather that mass all the way. You'll feel like a pressure buildup in your abdomen, where you condense the forces down into your hips and your abdomen, et cetera, et cetera. So tenjijin basically is actually a very sophisticated exercise, which is why my friend Alex dumbed it down into what he called down and out.
Yeah.
Which is just, because he was like, there's too many things going on. Yeah. So he produced a dumbed down version, but still, the idea is before you even get into tenjijin, like with this kind of thing, you have to be able to do mabu or stance. Or stance just means understand how to sit. If you are holding your arms out here, you don't want the shoulders to be holding this up. This is a load. If you were holding a really heavy bar, then you need to be able to adjust your head, like I'm doing now. I'm actually using my chin to adjust my clavicle here, because if this were a really heavy bar, I can't hold it like this. So I need to counteract that with the weight, with the adjustment of my head, to bring this weight here, make it feel light by getting it to sit in my hips, and then that forms the arch to sit into mabu. So mabu is not about strengthening the legs, although that does happen. It's understanding what does it mean to drop the hips. And to dropping the hips means that you're adjusting your center of gravity in order to counteract what are essentially big weights, your arms.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if that's, I never did get good at San Tisha from Xingyi.
Same. Well, same, more nuanced in a way, because now they're adding other things. They actually add, you can see this divot right here. This is the same. This is going to follow the similar logic by how you hold the sword in Japan. And it's the same way actually you hold chopsticks. Pro tip that I just discovered: if you guys want to recreate aikiage from a very basic standpoint, I have a lot of different hacks, but a really nice one: hold a chopstick properly. And by that, I mean you insert the top chopstick here such that you're articulating it on the vertical plane, not sideways, not anyway, on the vertical plane. And then the bottom chopstick sides under here. And what happens is now I've tensioned the palm fascia this way. This is going out this way. So now you have one direction of force this way, second direction of force out this way. And then you bring the thumb and wrap it around like this.
Mm-hmm.
That, in essence, is going to still be the same as like what you see as Santi Shi, when you see this divot and people talk about Lao Gu point, et cetera, et cetera. When you do that, if you hold a chopstick and grab somebody's wrist, it's really easy for them to raise you and you don't break the grip. You actually control their balance very easily. Again, one point of contact, two directions of force.
Okay, we're going to come back to that because I need the chopstick tip as much as the martial arts tip. Okay. It's the same as Santi in the sense that you don't want your shoulders carrying the weight of that arm.
Correct.
You want that arm, which is why they say, you're not traditionally, nobody's gonna teach you any of the like 5 forms of like Shi until you can hold that position for like an hour or whatever it is.
Exactly.
For an hour because your shoulders aren't holding it up, so you're fine.
Right.
Okay. So then with Tenchi Jin, you said you said you're bringing the force down into your center. What are you talking about?
Oh, okay. Let me use a really simple example. Ark is really brilliant, let me just say, in the way that he simplified this. Okay, so if I have a stick, or let's say a barbell, not too heavy because obviously I can't realistically hold it, but let's say if I can hold this barbell in such a way that I counteract its weight here, right? In order for me, let's say, to move this easily, like from the ground to me, first I need to use my elbows here to draw this in the easiest way possible to my body. Now I'm going to rotate this here. Now instead of pushing this up, and we never fight gravity if we can help it. We can utilize gravity.
Yeah.
But my friend Alex was like, his supposition was you never fight gravity. So what can you do? Well, if you have this stick that is conveniently attached to you, as you lean backwards, what happens when you lean backwards? Which way does the force go? It goes up.
Yeah.
So that means there's a slight adjustment on the inside that you can't see, where the person is slightly adjusting their central axis to go backwards, and that's going to create this uprising force, which is why you see the hands go upwards like this. Okay, so this answers the upwards part, but you were asking about the downwards part. Well, it's just watch Olympic weightlifting, right? Olympic weightlifting, when they do the snatch, it's like right above their nape of the neck, which makes sense. Actually, if you're carrying a really heavy load, it has to go there. If you bring this down here, like this, to your collarbone here, then you're going to feel compression. Even without a stick, I feel incredible engagement in my abdomen where it just like inflates basically here. And I can get that to come all the way down, also past my abdomen into the soles of my feet, even if I'm just sitting on this chair. Right? So that is basically what you're doing without a weight. So always in your mind, even though you don't have a weight, act as if you are carrying a weight, which Chinese would say intent, yada, yada, yada. Right.
Yeah. But that's an interesting. Well, that also explains the intent thing, which is a thing that I've heard lots of different conversations about.
Oh, wait. Well, let me interject. Right, it's been recorded now. So Murofushi, the Olympic hammer throw guy, he measured what is the difference between an actual isometric contraction versus you take a paper mache balloon with nothing in it and you push around it. That actually produces greater contractions and stimulation of the internal muscles. They measured it like on an EKG. It's like crazy amounts of stimulation compared to one where you grab like a roller ball or like a medicine ball and you crush it.
Yeah.
The one with the imaginary one actually activates more.
Interesting. I'm going to, this is just such a convenient, I have more questions in that direction, but so maybe we can come back to them. But this is such a convenient time to do that thing where we come back to like things that people already have experienced or can experience. Right? And I'm thinking, thinking jujitsu because just that's just what I know, and and for a bunch of other reasons. But
Mm-hmm.
there is a so Jack Taufer came on this week on BJJ or something, and he
Mm-hmm.
was showing some of the stuff that like Hickson does.
Mm-hmm.
And my very first, again, that first like afternoon, like in Cairo, where I did BJJ with this friend of mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was showing me guard, like close guard. And I'm
Yeah.
in close guard, and then he's like, okay, I pull you down.
Yeah.
Now you put your hand on my hip, left hand on my hip,
Yeah.
right hand on my like, at my like at my like the bottom of my rib cage or whatever, right? Solar
Yeah.
plexus.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, I pull you down, you post.
Uh-huh.
And I said, okay. And then he was kind of explaining to me, you're just guard, right? You're gonna unbalance someone, you're gonna break someone's. But he was particularly talking about breaking someone's like posture.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, so you're pulling me down. I'm solving this problem by posting on your chest. And he was like, yes. And then I'm like, well, what's your solution? And he was like, well, I move your hand out the way. I said, okay, that's a reasonable solution. And then I was like, what's my solution? And he was like, put your hand on my chest. And I was like, I just had my hand on your chest, right? And he was like, yeah. And then I said, well, but what's the solution? He was like, well, no, that's just the game. And I remember saying, okay, because I'm a big believer in if you don't know what you're talking about, shut up, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I am also a big believer on later when I understand this more, something less stupid is going to happen. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, this is like, I'm like, this constant, like, because we'll never get out of this little loop, right? Like, it's like a weird little loop.
Yeah.
There has to be a better solution. I didn't even know there was a better solution, but I'm like, just on principle, I'm going to say there is.
Mm-hmm.
Years later, Jack Taufer comes out and he shows that little thing that like Hickson does where he tilts his hip.
Uh-huh.
You ever seen that before?
Yeah.
I was like, son of a, this is what I was talking about, right? Because now I don't need to depend on but of course at this point I've suffered a lot from posting and not posting and getting crushed and getting that, right? Yeah. So this is personal to me now, right? So I'm like, oh, there you go, right?
Yeah.
You tilt your tip in this way, they're pulling up against your like back to break your posture. That force is being kind of transferred into your knee. You do not need your hand to stay up. Your hand is free to do all kinds of things.
Yes.
Get people the hell out of your way, and you can do that. All right. Two things. One of the things that's cool about that is that it's an actual solution to the problem, but it was really interesting how long it took people to understand, like in jiu-jitsu, like how long it took people that I'm training with, just like friends of mine, to understand why this is really cool. Mm-hmm. Because they're still thinking of this like, they're like, that's a detail. I'm like, no, it's not a like, the point is for the person whose guard I'm in, to sort with this, to deal with this problem, they would have to take their hand and literally put it inside my abdomen and like massage the inside of my abdominal muscles into relaxing before they can break my posture.
Yeah.
It takes the game out of their hands completely. Mm-hmm. It becomes a game that I'm playing with myself, actually. Mm-hmm. I can hold that, my posture doesn't break. If I can't manage that, my posture will break, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm saying this to get people to just understand that you're not saying anything weird, but that also to say, okay, what then is the use of these little micro adjustments that you're making in Tenshijin to transfer the force or to keep that central equilibrium there? What is the use of that in fighting? Like, what does it matter if you move your leg from up here in your diaphragm, right? Or if you sink that weight from that, like that powerlifting thing, sink that weight into your hip, into your foot. What is the point? Why would I do that instead of just doing things the way I normally do them?
Well, okay, let me back up first. A lot of these things that I just described are more, it's about getting granular control over your body, first and foremost. Mm-hmm. Where sometimes I describe like where I can move 10 parts, Art moves like goddamn like 150 parts in between. I'm just like,
Yeah.
This dude is just like unhinged when it comes to like the amount of control he has.
Mm.
Before we consider all of this, we back up to one point of contact, multiple directions of force. And that means that you don't want to move your whole body all at once. Sometimes it means that one demo I often give is like, if you hold me here at my wrist, and if I try and do this all at once, you can stop me. But if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, now I can move this really easily. Because I just moved the whole chain, but you don't feel anything at the point of contact.
Mm.
Let's start there, right? So that when if you just move your ring finger, by the way, ring finger, wrist, elbow, you'll feel your chest move and then your stomach. You won't feel it if you do your index finger. It doesn't work with your middle finger because your middle finger is about rotation, you know? Doesn't work with your thumb, doesn't work with your pinky. These all serve different purposes in the body, right? Understanding the purposes leads to sophisticated solutions, whether you're standing, striking, stand-up grappling, or on the ground. So, but starting first understanding that it's not only about this like conditioning other way of moving, it's also about tricking the hell out of your opponent's brain, right? So if you can move in a way where you send no information to the point of contact and you move around it, you bait them basically. You can fake them out really easily. Now, yeah.
So this is, again, I think like this is a kind of like a more granular version of something that I think we do when we're grappling a lot.
Yes. Yep.
We're in a particular position, and I'm almost sometimes like when I'm grappling, I almost really don't want to move the area that I'm in contact with my opponent. I want to do a whole bunch to my body in the other direction.
Yes.
Basic, simple, like I want to get my hip out the way.
Yes.
Right? And then bridge.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so this thing with your arm is a little bit like that. It's like you've changed the whole orientation of your body.
Yes.
To that point.
Yes. Right. So this is the one that I give to seminars. You have your partner hold your fist. Okay. If you do this, right, they can stop you because the pressure at the point of contact increases. However, if I turn my head, then do this, they can't stop you, no matter how many times. Now, they can be really strong, and maybe that gap might only be a little, but they can never stop you. Like, there'll always be a gap. And what's funny is, for me, this is also kind of an IQ test. I hate to say it, because at a lot of seminars, when I do it in the beginning, I see lots of people, when I give a very simple instruction. Turn your head, then do this. And I see all sorts of people turning their head, move like doing all sorts of other stuff, and it's like already the game of telephone has started. By the way, this is why stuff does not get transmitted. People's observation is not a point. They don't do exactly as they're told, and they try to shoehorn in what they think they already know.
Yeah.
This is just a tip for anybody listening. Always do it exactly as the teacher says it. Even if you think you know there's a better way, just do it exactly as is and just unconditionally observe what happens. Make the judgment call later.
Right.
So anyways, but as to why that happens, I had this one Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, I'm not going to say who. He's like, dude, it's because you use your neck muscles. I'm like, well, yeah, I use my neck muscles to turn my head, but he's like, yeah, but you use your neck muscles. Right? And it's like, well, no, it's a simpler thing. My head is very heavy. And if you just turn your head, where is your weight now? It shifts. It's not in the center anymore. It's actually on one side. But this person is cued to stop you because the brain automatically calculates where to resist based off of that one touch, that it's going to be where your weight is in the middle. But now you've shifted it over here. But they don't know that because they can't feel it. Now you can move them.
It's like they're pushing you from a couple of centimeters past the point where they think that movement is starting.
Yes, the equation is shifted.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we have this granular control of the body, which allows you to reorient things, right? Like
Yes.
fine tune how where all the force vectors are coming from.
Yes.
And then we also have this conditioning, which makes your body, for example, say more stable with the I don't know what you called it, the jibangang, you know,
Yeah.
right? Okay, those things. So walk me through. We've got striking,
Yeah.
we've grappling standing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we've got grappling on the ground.
Yes.
For striking, how does this help?
Striking, it helps enormously because you need mobility. The problem in striking is not the power, actually. The problem in striking is consistency of power, and more than that, the control of the distance. So if you control this is especially true for weapons because you're basically fighting with two razor blades, right? They're really long and really sharp. But we're talking about Japanese swords.
Yeah.
You get nicked by one, it's all over. Whoever controls that distance psychologically controls the entire match, basically.
Okay.
And a lot of that perception comes from understanding like your center line, right? Your central equilibrium, and then how that affects somebody. So actually, when I was saying the brain can only process basically one vector at a time, something interesting happens actually when you're not even touching them, and this leads to the no touch stuff. And I was actually recently thrown under somewhat controlled conditions, but legitimately caused me to flip in there, even though the guy didn't touch me. And I observed my brain basically go derp, like, oh my god, what I was like, when he flipped me, I was just like, bro, you got skills. It's just like that was so cool. Because if you have a connected body and that person thinks that you can use them, that person thinks they can use you as support, right? But you're moving at a constant rate, both in this direction and this direction. Something happens to the brain where it can't quite understand what's happening because it's moving at a constant speed. And by the way, this skill is not just in, like, if you hear it in this context, you think of like, well, that sounds like a load of horse shit, right? But if we talk about special forces people, anybody that uses guns, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right?
Yeah.
Right. You never go like that's the white belt of airsoft or something. People go and being all jerky.
Right.
And when I do airsoft, and the best moments where you just walk in calmly, you catch everybody by flanking them. You just walk into the base and you go pop, pop, pop. It's not John Wick like bap, 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 right? Yeah. It's just almost casual, bap, bap, and you're moving at this constant speed. And you can watch their brains kind of go like, this dude is pointing a gun at me. What do I bam? And then it's like, hey, how do I bat? Right? So that means that when you only move at a constant speed, you don't trigger the brain's desire to react. You're bypassing that reaction. And when you watch special forces, when they clear a corner, it's very smooth. It's quick in a way, but it's not as quick as you might think. It's not like they're super fast. It's just that they're so smooth and there's almost no edges on their movement. There's no sudden movement. They change levels very, very, very smoothly. That it's almost hypnotic. And that is actually, you can actually do this in under controlled conditions where somebody tries to grab your wrist. And that if you drop your weight properly and you move at a constant speed, they follow you. And when you ask them, why are you following me? They're like, I don't know. It just feels like I can't, do anything about it.
Yeah, this was that exact phrase is the phrase that my jiu-jitsu coach used to say, and I've actually been trying to work on it for a while. It's like speed has become a really interesting thing because a lot of it has sensitivity.
Yes.
like with grappling especially, right? Like you're in contact, and so you can feel very minute things, and you can just sort of go there very casually, and it seems like
Mm-hmm.
but I'm actually not moving particularly fast, right?
Yes.
But then the other one is, if you're transitioning from, I don't know, like your scarf hold, side control, mount, right?
Mm-hmm.
The most frustrating people for me are really the people who I suppose it's just drilling, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
so smoothly. There's not really any time for a fight about it. Like the only thing you can do is in the first place keep that leg up so that they can't throw their other leg over. You know what I mean? But like you
Mm-hmm.
can't sort of get into that sort of like argument about what they're doing. Just no
Mm-hmm.
time for the argument. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so with striking.
Yeah. So with striking, because now you're controlling that distance, that means that it gives them less time to react. Now I can come back to something. There's a video maybe I can share with you later that shows this pro baseball guy talking about the importance of center line, basically. He's like, in baseball, he's like, we spent a lot of time with our lead foot on the tennis ball, and we weren't allowed to put any weight on that tennis ball. Because normally what happens when you swing that bat, what happens? Your weight comes forwards and it crushes the ball. That means that if you've already transferred all of your weight here, right, you have nothing else left to give. That's one. And Ichiro would used to say, actually, Ichiro would say that your chest, people turn the chest too early.
Mm.
Okay? Putting that aside, he said, we spent a lot of time lining up our ear all the way to our hips, all the way down to our feet. And he's like, and a funny thing happened. When you got that that alignment, it's like time slows down. Now, it's really easy to do this. You just get a bat, balance it over your foot to where you get this alignment. Now, I don't know, like it's easy for me to show this in person. I do this at seminars all the time. The way that you test this is very easy. One is you just hold the shape like this, and you give them, say, I'm going to throw a tennis ball at you. I want you to catch it. I don't care how you catch it. Just catch it, right? So you just have the shape. Here, your weight's over this foot, and you catch it, and you measure their reaction time, how they catch it. Every single time, as soon as you get the alignment and you get them to feel like they're balanced over that foot in a particular way, and their feet feel light, well, when you throw them the tennis ball, they move slower to intercept the same speed ball. That means that their brain is able to perceive it. They have much more time to react.
That's interesting. Why would that be?
Wow. Don't have the idea. Somebody asked me, what is the sport? I was like, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, dude.
I'm
just observe. But yeah, it's just like, this thing. So, but they talk about center line. They talk about the ability to perceive.
Yeah.
And boxers, my boxing coach is like, you have to be able to see the punch. So I'm like, I showed him that video. He's like, oh, this is a very good video. I was like, Anuj, so when you're saying see the punch, you're saying as soon as your balance is on point, let's say center line is on point, you're able to see the punches clearly because it looks like they're going slower. So like, yes. I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah, getting these guys to explain what they're actually doing is
and caveat, Anuj is one of the best trainers I've ever met. Like he's one of the most granular, and even then, it's just kind of like it didn't occur to him.
Yeah. Well, a lot of I think learning, like any like anything really. Like I'm a teacher by profession. As is learning anything. Yeah. The amount of stuff that the people who are sitting in front of you understand, like if I'm just teaching students like English or like history, right? The amount of stuff that they're picking up and the amount of stuff that you're saying are wildly disproportionate. Like you're saying 1%, and you're really struggling hard to say that 1%, right? Because you know a lot more than that, because you're teaching, like a 14-year-olds or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But they think they're understanding what you're saying, but 99% of what's happening is that they're just picking stuff up. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's kind of a crazy thing. No matter how good a teacher you are, most of the learning is just happening by itself. So it's weird.
But that's why I always try to throw out these examples. It's like Well, say for striking, right? Well, then if you have control of your center line like this, you're able to see the punches faster, react to them. You can beat them. You can control the distance. Now suddenly that makes visceral sense. It's not most people. Most people timing is like, oh. It's like that's not timing. Timing is like you actually can read the person's movement because your brain is trying to process it. Now, at the elite levels, this is where it's a sport and everybody's doing the same thing, and it becomes much more the differences are much smaller. But between somebody that is trained versus not trained, it looks like magic.
Yeah. Okay, so one thing is something about balance and perception, and this is really interesting to me because one of the like most interesting things I've ever read about martial arts is actually somebody did an interview with Kuroda Sensei, and he said all this like stuff where I'm like, dude, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like,
yeah,
and the problem with Kuroda Sensei is you're looking at him and you're like, you are very fast. So when he starts talking about speed, there's none of that like you're making this up. It's like on video. He's just fast, right?
Yeah.
And so and he's not doing anything to anybody else. He's just in himself fast.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so when he starts talking about speed and he says this stuff, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I wish I did. But hearing you now, I'm like talking about Ichiro, who's baseball, right? He's a baseball player.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm like, oh, that's interesting because a lot of the stuff that like he talks about is balance, and then a lot of the stuff that he talks about is speed and the ability to perceive someone's motion.
Yes.
So those things, I guess they're related. I don't really understand.
They are.
Yeah.
For sure. By the way, Ichiro modeled his batting after, I forget his name. He was a Showa period home run guy, and he learned his stuff. He modeled his stuff after a coach who modeled it after sword stuff, who went to basically professional sword cutter, basically. So they did a deep study into basically that swinging cutting mechanic. So Ichiro actually cuts the ball as opposed to like hitting the ball.
Interesting.
The mechanics are a little bit, it's nuanced, but it's actually not nuanced if you know what you're looking for.
Okay, so the first connection is we've talked about that Jibengong exercise, right, with the leg raising. What do you call it?
Ashiage, just leg raising. Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about Ashiage, and so we said there's that standing on one point thing. Okay, right? So we have the Ashiage, we have the leg raising, standing on that one point, right? We're developing that standing on that one point with which exercise? Is it with the leg raising exercise?
No, the leg raising is more like in the very beginning, it's just stabilizing this upper cross. It's a very broad sense of just, can you keep the whole body stable when you raise the leg? As you become more sophisticated, you develop that standing on one point, which somebody shows you and you can integrate it.
Okay.
And then, tenjijin,
Okay, so you let's take the part of that leg raising where you made that sort of stable axis point, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can imagine that would be helpful with kicking or punching, say.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Describe that to me. Like, describe to me how a kick. I saw a video of you, and I also saw a video of Akuzawa kicking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's another one of those things that you can just see. You can just look at it.
Yeah.
It's kicking, a normal kick, and we all know how that feels like. And if any like Muay Thai or whatever, which I've dabbled around with that a little bit. Okay, I see, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's like a weird thing when I'm watching like our kick or even the video that I saw of you kick. It's weird. You're doing something weird, but I don't know what it is. And then the thing that's happening to the person is visually different. Not even better. I mean, it may be better for some applications. Like you might want to do something and it's better to use that. But right now, I'm just like, why is that? What is that difference and why is it there? And what does it have to do with Ashiage?